Today on Team Harrow, we bring you a two-part series with Jon Almeida, who dreamed of becoming a pro soccer player. After facing countless obstacles and burning out, Jon returned home feeling defeated. But his story didn't end there. He took on the challenge of rebuilding his childhood club team, and 2 years later, they won the U.S. Youth U19 National Championship. This conversation is about more than soccer. It's about resilience, reinvention, and finding purpose. Get ready to be inspired by Jon's journey. Hit subscribe because the journey starts now, and you won't want to miss it. Okay, great. Well, Jon, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is one of the first people that I thought of having on this podcast to talk about resilience and overcoming insurmountable odds against you and kind of being thrown a curveball in your life after you and I first met and our continued friendship here in Boca. I thought you'd be a great person to come and talk on the podcast. But first, I want to ask you, did you watch Copa and what were your thoughts of how the U.S. team played? Or more importantly, did you root for Brazil or did you root for the U.S.?
I mean, I was for both sides.
Yeah.
Right. But when the U.S. plays their side, I'm U.S. When Brazil plays their side, I'm Brazil.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm more Brazil than I am U.S.
Of course.
But I was very, U.S. they played it very well.
Yeah.
Overall, if you count overall, they didn't play bad.
Yeah.
Right. If you're putting together the World Cup performance with the Copa America performance, and then Brazil is just. They're in a process of rebuilding right now. I think the U.S. just need a coach, and they just right now, if I'm not mistaken, they got Pochettino from Chelsea.
Was that official? I know that they were looking at him.
I'm not sure if they made it official, but I saw they came out with they're talking to him. So
yeah,
that should be good for the U.S. You know,
we're as an adopted Brazilian family, I feel like coming into South Florida and becoming friends with you and your family and the club. Peyton has become a little Brasileiro, so we were rooting for Brazil too when they were playing and rooting for the U.S. obviously. Yeah. It's funny during Europa because we were in Spain for soccer during Europe, and I was like, Peyton, this is who Italy's playing, and talking about Italy, and he's like, yeah. I don't think we're going to make it past group stage, Dad. He's like, I'm already rooting for Portugal. I was like, oh, come on, man.
Oh, yeah. It's when it gets to that stage, when you're Brazil and Brazil's not playing, you're just, I want Ronaldo, I want Ronaldo to get as far as he can,
Yeah.
That's how it is.
I read an interesting article, I think it was from Freddie Adu. The kid that, he played, I think he was the youngest at the time, what's his name? Cade Sullivan, I guess, broke the record as technically the youngest kid to sign. And it was an article or something on social media talking about the U.S.'s performance during Copa and the Olympics. And I thought it was interesting, and I definitely want to know your take on it. He was talking about that the real issue with U.S. soccer and why we can't really progress is that for whatever reason, we focus more on the thoroughbred. I want the most athletic kid out there. 100%. And then you look at other countries like a Costa Rica, a Panama, a Croatia, 6 million people in the country. We're a country of 300 million people. Yeah. But if you put R11 versus Air 11, it's always this real hard fought match and kind of 50-50 of who wins. And it's not that we don't get outrun on the pitch. It's just that we get out soccered, right? And it's the skill set. And, from a Brazilian background and playing soccer your entire life, how do you see that? Is that the problem with U.S. soccer? Is there a way to fix that?
Being honest with you, I think I've always had a take on this, and it was like back then when I was playing, it was DA, right? It was called Development Academy. Now it's called MLS Next. So everyone watches MLS Next, and the sad truth is that majority of there's a lot of kids in MLS Next and top teams that shouldn't be playing MLS Next. If you go to Hialeah, Kendall, you'll find 100 different South Americans with the American citizenship that can be playing in the U.S. national team, but they just don't select those guys. Like if you just come to my team alone, I have guys like Lucas, like all those guys, the Brazilians that have American citizenship. those guys could be playing, top level. So for me, I just think that it's they're selecting maybe the wrong type of guys to go up. I'm not saying they're bad, they don't deserve to be there, but I'm saying there's a lot of really really good players playing in other parts that they could be picking out.
Yeah, he in the article he mentioned that where he used like Messi for example, and he said if Messi was growing up in the U.S. at 12 years old, he probably would have gotten overlooked because he wasn't the biggest and he wasn't the fastest, and all these other countries, and I've seen it firsthand. And it was eye opening when we took our son and when we took Peyton to Spain 2 years ago for him to play in that soccer camp there, where it was like, wow, the way that these 12-year-old kids can pass and move the ball, and no one's just kicking the ball and trying to outrun them like a kickoff in football. No. And it really opened my eyes of you can have 11 thoroughbreds, but you can outpass a thoroughbred. And it's this just touch, right? Attack on the left, nothing there, pass back. Attack on the right, nothing there, pass back. I'm like, they're passing back to the goalie, and no one. If you pass back to the goalie here, everyone's like, "Don't do that."
I tell my guys all the time. I was like, if you go into a rondo, a small sided game in Europe, you're looking at the ball the whole entire time. You're not finding it because it's pinged from one end to the other, and you're just like chasing. At this point, you're just like looking.
Peyton said that. He said that when they were at camp, the rondos were so small, and the ball just pinged around. And then he said when he came back here after Spain and first week of practice and they did a rondo, it was this giant circle, and the ball just slowly moved. And he said it was just night and day. And you experienced it too because you're through the club. You recommended we send him to Europe to just experience it, which I recommend to any parent that can make it happen to 100%. Send their kid to Europe just for soccer camp to experience what the game is like over there.
100%.
It was eye-opening and it helped in the development. But as a youth player, let's get into you and your story. You grew up here in South Florida,
yes,
right? And why don't you kind of kick us off with you playing soccer here and what did soccer growing up as a kid mean to you? I mean, was it more than just an after-school activity?
So for me, it was more of like I was into baseball. I was really big into baseball. This was like when I was probably like 7, 8.
I'm sure your Cuban father is gonna be happy to hear that.
Yeah. So baseball was everything for me, right? I used to play travel baseball in a really good team here in Boca. They're called the Panthers. And then it came to a point where I was playing baseball and soccer because I was going to a school called Boca Prep. They're a soccer academy. They also have tennis. It's really big in sports. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. So I started playing soccer and I started playing baseball. So I had to split myself up. I was like, one day I'm going to baseball practice, one day I'm going to soccer practice. And it came to a point where it was just like, okay, it's impossible to do both. And then we ended up moving to Brazil. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing to do here. I'm just gonna, we went to a Walmart before we went to Brazil. And I bought these like little bases, those little, you can put them on the street.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach the Brazilian kids how to play baseball.
There's not many third basemen coming out of Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, it's just like, so I'm just like trying to teach these kids how to play. And I'm just like, okay, it's not gonna work, right? So my time there, I started playing soccer, and that's when I started falling in love with it. If you know, everyone knows Brazil. They're sick with soccer. That's their religion, right? So for me, it was a new experience. I started taking that on. Finally, our time in Brazil ends, and we come here. So I take everything I learned there and apply it to here, right? And that's when it really started taking off. 14, 15, started taking it. It was really competitive. Training every single day, 3 times a day. In the morning, in the afternoon, and then our team session right at night. But when it really, really started taking off was around 16 when I got the opportunity to go on my first trial overseas in Europe. I went to Portugal actually with 2 of my teammates. I went to Famalicão. They're a team that they're now in the first division. They're really, really top team now. Back then they were in the second, and that was the real wake up call for me. Was when I had that first trial, because there's a difference when you go for like a camp or when you go to experience the European culture, which I was able to do it in England, Spain, But when you go for a trial with a professional team where these guys are getting, some of them are getting paid to be there. Some of them are, they get housing, they get everything. Some of them have already pre-contracts with the pros. That was life changing for me. That was when it's like, okay, I came back from that and I was like, okay, now we know what we need to work. Now we know what we need to do in order to get there. And that's also what motivates people to work towards that dream is to, okay, if you want that shot, even that little 2-week trial or a month trial with that pro team, you have to outwork everyone else.
Yeah,
it's gonna take you 2-3 years to get to that 2-week trial, but it's so worth it.
Yeah,
so worth it. That was the biggest wake up call that I've ever had in soccer.
I think that's so important to be able to get forced outside your comfort zone, right? You were in South Florida, kind of the big fish in a little pond,
Yeah.
and then getting put into an environment where it's a bunch of other big fish and this is the ocean,
Yeah.
right? And realizing, all right, I thought I was good, but there's a lot of other dudes here that can play and I need to up my level of performance and what do I need to do to better myself, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It's the adapting to the cold weather, adapting to sometimes your head's telling you to do something, but it's not working out. So that was it was really really interesting that one time I had.
So then you came back and finished up high school here.
So I came back. I always had it set in my mind. My dream was to go pro, right? Thinking about it now, I had my whole entire life already planned out what I wanted to do. And pro was my main, and then I had my second option was obviously college, right? So I wanted to, if for some reason that it ended up working out, college was my route. But I was just so set and done with, okay, that's what I want. I'm going professional. And I actually left school my freshman year and I started doing online full-time FLVS. So I can train, I can have my morning session, I could have the afternoon session, and I could have the night session. So a lot of people are like, oh, like how can you do FLVS? It's really hard because you're not gonna focus. He's like, I just had my mind so I was already, I treated my body, I treated myself as a professional player. I'm doing everything I can do to get to that level. I'm gonna treat myself like a professional.
And
recovery.
This was 16, 17 years old?
This was around 16, 15, 16. So at 15, 16, I was already, okay, this is what I want to do, right? So I would have my session we would have a training at 5 a.m. with I used to have a coach named Choco. He's by far one of the best trainers I've ever had. Right, out of everywhere I've been, I tell this to everyone, and I know he'll be watching as well, so I have to give him a little shout out. But he's one of the best coaches I've ever had in my life, and he dedicated to us. Later on I'll fill it in, but that's what I'm trying to give out to my players, right? But he would wake us up at 5 a.m. He'd be on top of us at 5 a.m. And if you don't answer the phone at 5 a.m., he's blowing your phone up at 5 a.m., texting you, where are you? So we'd have a session at 5, we'd go to the gym, and then at around 4 o'clock, we have a session before the actual team session, and then we have our team session. So imagine, we're doing that every single day.
So you're doing 3 sessions a day, more or less?
Around, yeah, 3
morning,
3 days.
Pre-practice, and then actual practice.
Yeah, so Monday to Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday we have games, right? Obviously, it's not consistent Monday through Friday, but obviously if one day we want to take a rest, we will. And it's not always, intense sessions. Like our afternoon session might be maybe a light soccer tennis or something to, recover the body. But that's how it was every single day for us, majority of the time. So after I came back from Portugal at 16, I was like, okay, this is it. I want this, right? We're going at 100%, no matter what it takes, no matter what I have to do to get there. I'm going. So as time goes on, I'm playing at 16 because in Europe they have a rule where you have to be 18 to sign a contract, or you have to have a citizenship, a passport from Europe, a Euro passport, in order to be able to stay there, or you have to have family that lives there. I didn't have any of those, so we came back and we were doing from when I was 16 all the way till I was 18. I was just playing at FC Boca, at Predators. And that's when we took off as a team. We achieved so many, we played every single tournament. We traveled to Sarasota, Bradenton. We played the top level tournaments and we won everything. At that point, I would say we had like a super team where Choco had built that. And what makes that team so good was that not only were we a team on the weekends and on the weekdays we trained together, but we were a family. You know, we would call each other up and meet up on the weekends. We would go to the mall together. We would go to each other's house, barbecue. It was always something involved. You know, it wasn't just okay, we're playing together, it's practice together, and then games together. It was the whole entire team was just, you know, meeting up for something. If it was for, you know, go to someone's house to hang out or a little dinner or barbecue, whatever it was. That's what made us strong.
Those are always the best teams to play for. I can remember with hockey, with lacrosse teams, and even the SF teams, that it wasn't just what you did on the field, it was off the field, right? That is the most memorable, and some of like the real team bonding that makes you the team. Those are great, like, fun teams. And to be honest, like my lacrosse teammates, some of my fondest memories with them is off the field, right? Like, we had great experiences on the field, but when we get together and BS and tell stories from back in college, most of them are stuff that we did off the field and when we were hanging out, right? Those are great times, and that's what makes a good team, that bonding. So you're on path to become a professional after your time here in South Florida, which is a hotbed for youth soccer. What's next for you?
So that period of when I came back to when I turned around from 16 to 17, it was one of the best times I've had here, right? And then when I turned 18, it was kind of like the end of our team, right? And then I ended up going to Argentina. Got the opportunity through Choco's friend, which his name is Silvano. He formed a lot of players he formed Falcao, the Colombian striker. So he had the opportunity to he came out to me. He's like, listen, we have this team in Argentina. I'm gonna send over a group of guys from here. You guys go on a trial over there. So I was like, okay, whatever it takes, wherever I have to go, I'll go. Being a Brazilian going into Argentina, you can already see
enemy territory.
Yeah. So you can already see how I for me it was a little bit nerve wracking. You know, having to come to a country where I speak the language but not so well. Being a Brazilian American, you know.
They already have 2 strikes against you.
Yeah. So the moment I got that opportunity, I was like, you know what? If I have to go there to reach my dream, I'm going. So I ended up leaving. We ended up leaving. We went over there, and it was a process. It was 6 months of, you know, the first 3 months was preseason for us. And it was brutal.
Was there any other English speaking or Brazilians on the team?
No.
Okay.
There was no Brazilians. American, it's English speakers. It was more of like the guys that, you know, they watch Netflix, so they understand the sometimes.
Obviously, they know all the curse words.
Yeah. So, those guys were there, but I had, you know, some players that came with me that spoke Spanish that were, you know, obviously helping me out. And the Argentines, they have a really, you know, difficult accent to understand. It's like the Spaniards. It's very complicated. So, my first when I first get there, you know, it was a little bit it was dealing with the heat, dealing with their culture, dealing with their trainings. It's very intense. For me, it was probably one of the most intense I've ever been in.
Was it more physical?
More physical, less ball, more weights in the gym, and just a lot of running, right? And I remember it was like for the first month, I was destroyed. It was like my body just aches. I can't when I sleep. I'm in pain everywhere because it was very intense. Heavy gym for an hour and a half every single day. Then fitness for an hour, and then the last 30 minutes they'll do a little game, and at that point your body's just so done that you're just like, oh, we have to play now again. So and just to give you a little idea on how intense it is over there, when they schedule a friendly game, they'll do like a 2-hour fitness training session before the game, and then that hour they'll go and they'll throw you into the game. So they'll do like 45 minutes, one team plays and the other team is doing fitness, and then second half 45 minutes these guys come off and then the other guys come on and then they're playing, and then we're doing like a recovery now. So I'm just like, wow. Like I was telling my friends there, I was like, listen, like if you watch their first team play, like they have a professional team and then they call it the reserves, right? They have those guys playing and then they have the professionals playing. If you watch their game, none of them last 90 minutes. It's like always someone's pulling something, either a hamstring gone or ankle, something's going on because it's like it's so intense. They have to learn how to balance it out, So that was one thing I noticed when I was over there, and it was like they keep it at a very intense level, which is good. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a drop.
Yeah.
If they don't drop it,
the recovery piece, right? I think a lot of, I remember watching another podcast. There was an MMA guy on there talking about his training cycle for the same reasons of you can't go into the gym every day and burn it down because come fight time, you're going to have nothing in the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that for me, that whole experience right there was very different. Very, very different compared. They always say here in America, if you take a team from here and take them to Europe or go to South America, it's different. It's different because their style of play is just they set a level of intensity there where it's like I've never seen before.
I've witnessed it in Europe. I've saw a team from Colombia. So Peyton's team, the end of this past season, was in Enigma Cup in the championship. In the championship game before them, it was maybe like the U15 or U16, and they had a club team from Colombia come up, and they were an academy team for one of the pro teams in Colombia. And Miguel knew who they were, and they worked over a really good Weston team.
Yeah.
And Weston is a power, another soccer powerhouse down here in South Florida.
Yeah.
I bet you they beat them 11-2, 11-3.
Right.
And it was just, you could tell they're two 16-year-old teams, but this team is just way above this other team. And it's like we were talking about before with that technique and touch. It wasn't that they got outrun. It wasn't that that team's conditioning sucked. It was just that they got out soccered.
Yep.
Yeah.
My time at Predators, we had when we were at our one of the best we were. We actually ended up taking a trip to Argentina to play a tournament there.
Oh, the Mundialito?
Mundialito, yeah. And we played against a team in the 4th division, 5th division, Cipolletti they're called, and we lost 10-0. And that was just like wow. If you sat in the stand to watch that game, these guys are pinging the ball, like you said, boom, back to the goalkeeper to the fullback to the midfielder. It's like every single guy's touching the ball.
Yeah.
And that was another big wake up call for us. It was just like wow, like these guys are different.
For sure.
They push their guys to be different.
Yeah.
So now I'm in Argentina where I'm a little bit familiar with it because I've been for the Mundialito, but those 3 months were brutal. And then finally comes time to the first few games of the season, and they called me up for one of the games against River Plate. We were supposed to be playing. This was before the season even started. It was the last game, like a little friendly. They were
pre-season.
Yeah. So they call. They say okay. They give us the list of the guys, and it's usually like 40 something guys. They cut it down to 30, right? And they were like okay. These are the guys going to travel to Buenos Aires, yeah, to play against River Plate. And I was already super excited for this. And I was like, wow.
River is one of the biggest teams.
The biggest teams in the world. They compete for everything, right, in South America. And I was like, okay, this is going to be good. Super excited. A little bit nervous, but let's see how it goes. And in training, I go and I ended up pulling my hamstring, right? And it was so bad because it started to like internally bleed, and I was so much pain. And then I ended up missing out on that game, and they put me in rehab for like in physical therapy for around 2-3 weeks until I could see what was going on. And this is a little experience that I encountered in there. I was like, okay, sitting with all these guys that are injured but that have lived there, and that's when you get to know a lot of these guys. I sat down with the kid, probably like 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and he looks at me and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" in Spanish. I'm like, "Oh, I hurt my hamstring," and then I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" He goes, "My knee. I have trouble with my knee." I'm like, "Okay," and then I look at his arm, and if you see, his whole right arm is tattooed.
At 12.
At 12. So I look at him and I'm like, "How old are you?" And he goes, That's when he said, I don't remember if it was 11 or 12. And I'm like, when did you get that done? He goes, I got that done 2 years ago. And I'm like, that doesn't add up. And he's like, yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, wow, like if a 12-year-old kid got this done, right? It just goes to show you the level of these guys. It's like these guys are, when they were born, they're like, okay, their mission is to become a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show you like the maturity here in America. You never see that.
Yeah.
You'll never see that. And it just goes that these guys, they're they probably get abandoned at a young age, and soccer's their only way out.
Yeah.
So
I remember talking to one of the other parents, another Brazilian guy, and he was just explaining to me that in Brazil there are tons of schools in like the sticks, like the back country of Brazil, almost like soccer factories where they're working these kids, and kids are trying to become pro, and clubs will come in and be like, all right, out of these 250 kids, I'm gonna take those two.
Yeah.
And it's really their only way out.
Yeah.
And their only way to survive really is to try and become pro at 10 years old, right?
It's sad. It's sad because there's out of those 200, you bring them here and they'll all make it to a top college or to a professional team, But that for me, I was like, wow, I've never seen.
You think you want it, but you don't want it as bad as the 12-year-old, right? That's eye opening.
This is what feeds their family,
Yeah.
And another crazy experience that I witnessed there was after I got injured, I went to watch one of the friendly games that we had in the team facility, right? It was the reserves against some local team, and I remember one of the guys that were playing. He was 2003, 2004. Back then, he was probably like, if I was 18, he was probably around like 16, 15, around there, and he was a striker, and he goes and he scores a goal. And he goes and he starts running to the sideline, and he goes to the fence, and he gives a kiss on this little girl, and I look at him like what is going on here? And he's like, and my friend told me, well, that's his kid. And I'm like, wow. So these guys, they're doing this because if they don't perform, they don't have enough money to go home and feed their family.
Yeah.
So that's another, I took that in, and I'm like, this is a whole different world here.
Yeah.
This is it. Like, these guys they're legit, So that was super cool. That was super, it was a humbling experience for me to go over there and see that. And then as time goes on, I'm in my to recover, and we get hit with COVID. That was the first hit, right? So they hit us up. They're like, okay, a week. We're only in for a week, so we're gonna be doing, everyone go home, no training for a week, and then that week turned into 2 weeks, turned into 3 weeks, 4 weeks, until a month, 2 months, 3 months, right? So I was stuck there for around 6 months in Argentina, total, right? So those 6 months, we weren't even allowed to leave the house. I didn't know what was going on. And it may sound a little funny, but we were like, I was thinking there was a zombie apocalypse outside. I was like, this is crazy.
You're stuck in Argentina during the end of the world.
In a house, all we had is a little courtyard. You could see you have some daylight outside, but we're not allowed to leave. We can't see cars. We can't walk around. So now we're shifting to a place where, imagine, we come from South Florida. We were able to easily walk outside, to now being locked into a house for 6 months. And seeing the same people over and over and over again, eating the same exact food every single day, because that's all we could get there. And I'll never forget pasta bolognese, just red sauce. With that was every day we'd be eating that. So when you're with someone for so long, you start losing your mind a little bit. And there was fights breaking out in the house. There was, sometimes we can't see you for the whole day. I'm going here, you stay there, right? That's how it was every single day. Until a team introduced us to a training through Zoom, which we weren't familiar with because Zoom really only took off.
Like post-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, yeah. So
now we're creating these Zoom accounts, and we're going on these Zoom trainings with like 40 plus kids from each. So my team alone, I had around like 50 kids on the roster, right? It was a lot of players, and now I'm doing training on Zoom, right? So everyone that's in the house, they're doing their own different trainings, different categories, and again, I'm thinking, okay, at least we got away from the intense preseason. but now we're doing a Zoom training and it's 10 times harder. Imagine how you gonna do how you gonna make an intense training through Zoom when you don't even have that much space in the house. They did make it work. They'd make it work. You're if you're not running, you're doing something that's equal to running, and I'm like, wow, like, so we did that for a month until I couldn't take it anymore, and I was like, I'm going back home. So I contacted the club. I told the club, I'm like, listen, I have to go back home, and they were good about it. They said, yeah, as soon as it opens up back in, you're more than welcome to come back, because I was still in process of signing with them. I really want that was the plan. So there wasn't really a time for them to really, see, okay, he can sign, because we didn't really play much. It was just preseason. So we went to the embassy and stuck in the embassy for 6 hours until they were able to, get us a release. So finally we come back home and we're on the next flight the next day. They sent us a military plane to come pick us up.
Okay.
A lot of the Americans that were stuck there. Mm-hmm. So it was probably like 30, 40 Americans that were stuck in Argentina still. And they sent us back to America, and then I do the rest of the rest of COVID here. And then here we start making it a little more free. We can start going to the supermarkets with the masks on, all that stuff. So I take advantage, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start training again. So I took 2-3 weeks off, and now I'm going back into training. And imagine, no games, no nothing, just pure training. And there's a difference between when you're training for 6 months, right? You need to play. It's like I could be training for however long, but if I'm not playing, I'm not, I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
There's a major difference between training speed and game speed.
Exactly.
And it's very hard to replicate game speed.
100%. And that's what was hard for me, which was, I need to be able to play. I need to find something. So when I went to Portugal when I was 16, we played a friendly game where an agent over there had contacted me and my friend. And he said that to just stay in contact if I'm interested in coming back. So I gave him a call. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a team. How's the situation with COVID there? And he gave me the green light to go over. He said, come on trial. So I prepared for 2 months and I went over. And I was able to sign with the team in the 3rd division. And that was another, crazy experience for me, because it was like, I would never think that would actually work, being stopped for so long and getting to a club where, they've been playing. Now you have to get in and adapt to their level. So I signed up for the youth team, for the academy team, the reserves. Mm-hmm. And occasionally they bring some players up to train with the first team. And when I tell you, it's like, having to adapt again to the cold weather, which we were in the coldest part in Portugal. It's right next to Spain. Having to adapt to that, having to adapt to now a complete different style of Portuguese, where the Portuguese from Portugal is way different from Brazil.
Sounds Russian to me almost.
If I'm comparing it, I would either say it's a mix between like from England and from Ireland, mm-hmm. right? Put them together, and that's what you get.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you hear that, you have to like kind of tune in. We have to kind of like tune in and really understand what they're saying. That's how it is for me. Mm-hmm. And overall, it was just a really cool experience I had there. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I'll probably say I was at my best, physically, mentally, playing. My everything was just working.
What was the style of play? Obviously, I'm sure there are differences. What were some of the differences between the style of play that you felt playing in Argentina versus Portugal?
I feel like Argentina is just, they're a lot more physical, mm-hmm. less ball. You may get one or two guys that are really, really good with the ball at their feet, but other than that, it's very a physical game. Mm-hmm. And every single ball they're going at 200%, because that's everything for them. If you're going on a 50-50, make sure you're putting everything in it, because if not, they'll take your leg off. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of running, a lot of it's high. It's played very fast. In Europe, it's more technical game. Mm-hmm. Very technical. Ball at the feet. You very rare you see a long ball being played. It's keeper plays it, comes at the back. It's pure technique, and that's when I'm like, okay, I enjoy this. But it's fast. So mm-hmm. imagine if here's fast, just not as with the ball at the feet, but now in Europe it's like extremely fast.
Yeah,
these guys are pinging balls. Like if you're not getting into the game, then you're lost. and it took me around 2 months to get used to it, right? And my time in Portugal was it was very good. I enjoyed it a lot, and then it starts hitting again with COVID, where some guy tests positive in the league, and then you're out for 2 months, and then you go back, you play one game, and then another guy tests positive, and you're out for another 2 months. So I was dealing with that. I was dealing with the knee injury I had again. So it was a lot of things coming, that weren't in my favor. And then they come up with this idea to inject me with this painkiller, right? Where you feel great, and then after that you feel at your worst when you get home. And I just didn't feel like I had the proper recovery to deal with that. So I was getting hit with the worst types of pain after the games, and then having to deal with the COVID, with pausing after you play a game and you're out for 2 months. So that really messed as an athlete. It really plays with your head.
Mm-hmm.
And you have friends here going to college, you have people doing other things, and you're going for your dream, but it's being paused every now and then due to COVID. So I came to a point where mentally it took a huge hit on me, being injured, and then also with the stops. So I was like, I'm going back home. So I came back home to be with my family for a little bit. I really needed that. I was without seeing them for a long time, so I really needed to be around them. And I came home, and that's when things changed. My mindset was more towards now college, and I took the route where I went to North Carolina to play for a team over there. And the coaching staff was when I went to go talk to them, they were super cool, and they were Charlotte Independence coaches, so they know what it's like to play professional. They know what it's like to coach at professional level. So, and then I also went to meet up with Choco too, because Choco was going to be the goalkeeper trainer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what, maybe what I need right now is being close to people that I love, being close to people that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, your old mentor.
Yeah. So I needed that. It was a move that I had to go to, because it's like I'm doing it because I'm going to be with him. To be around him. So he's gonna help me. Maybe motivate myself again. So, my experience there was 6 months. And I was trying to find college, trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And then it came to a certain point where I started feeling pain again on my knee, started feeling pain on my ankle, and I was just like, you know what? For me, this is in my head, it was the biggest fear was having to admit that maybe I'm coming to
the end of your career.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a sad truth. It's like I don't want to say it. I never really said it out loud. I just had it in my head. And when I really realized that it was coming closer and closer was when I would start, whenever I didn't have games on the weekends, I would start scheduling either a flight to come to Boca, or I'd hop in a car and come to Boca. And then my mom's like, oh, like my parents were like, what's going on? How's everything going over there? It's good. I just never really wanted to express what I was really feeling.
Yeah.
I was just holding it in. So it came to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. Months came by. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I started losing the passion. Started losing, the want to wake up in the morning to go to the gym, the want to go to practice, and I feel like it from all those sessions from 3 times a day, 5 a.m. to afternoon to night, that really burned me out. And when it came time to talking to my mom about it, it was the hardest thing for me. The hardest thing was having to say to my family, I'm done.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. So that day came around. Funny story, I actually never really told them that I was done.
So then how did...
It just kind of... I came home, and I need a time off. And it just played out. Oh, what are you going to do now? Oh, college. Or, oh, I'm going to do this. But they kind of just realized where it was going.
That John's not going back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never, ever told my mom.
You never said out loud.
I never said I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I just said I just need some time for myself. Mentally, right now, I'm not so good. I'm not really at my best. I just, I'm going to start training and see where things go. And then eventually the topic kind of died off, but they really realized until, it's a sad topic at the house, talking about that, right? So that whole it was a year and a half of me just, training and figuring out what's next. And then I was contacting FAU, contacting this team in Virginia Liberty, FGCU, all to play, but ended up not working out because for me mentally I wasn't there. You know, mentally I wasn't. I was in my mind. I was like, am I really gonna be able to join into the program and be so devoted, waking up in the morning early, having to train with them every single day? Am I really up for that training? Is my body gonna be up for it? So I was just like,
And it sounds like you already know the answer to that
yeah,
question that you're posing, right?
yeah,
You know, I'm just going to be going through the motions.
yeah,
Like your head and your heart's not in it.
yeah,
I totally get that. After 4 years of playing college lacrosse, total of 8 counting high school, right? And same deal every day. And I loved it. And it was my passion. And if I had an hour to kill, I would go find a wall and just throw the ball against the wall. And it was almost like meditation to me. And I needed it. I wanted it. I loved it. And I chased that passion, and kind of similar, nothing was going to stop me to play Division I lacrosse. And when I had to meet my college counselor in high school, and he's like, all right, Ben, SAT scores, I'm not going to lie, kind of suck. These are the schools I suggest for you to apply to. Where do you want to go? And I said, I just want to play lacrosse in college, and I'm getting recruited right now by the Naval Academy and by West Point. So I think one of those. And he was like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. You should probably apply to some of these other schools. You know, like I'm not doing my job as your college guidance counselor just to say, hey, that's a great idea, but you should definitely apply to some of these other schools. And I said, I'm not going to. I was like, I'm just going to apply to one of them. And I only applied to one college, and that was West Point. And it was that mentality of, you know, I'm giving, there is no substitute for victory, right? Like I'm burning the boats. Like there's no way home. Like we're gonna make this work.
yeah,
And I totally get that drive of I'm gonna chase my dream wherever it takes me. We'll go down to Argentina. I'll adapt and overcome down in Argentina. That doesn't work. All right, we're gonna redevelop and kind of reevaluate like the plan and give this another go in Portugal.
yeah.
But I totally understand you can't fake the funk.
I can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And that for me, it was really hard. You know, it was really hard because it's like now in your head you're like,
It's almost your identity too, of like who you are. You know, you're John the soccer player. You're the kid that always was going to go pro.
Yep.
And everyone knew you for that.
Yeah.
And then now at what, 20, 19, you have to redevelop yourself and reevaluate, okay, who am I? What am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was hard because now it's like everyone counted on you for that. Everyone was like, this is what he does. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wasn't the best, but how hard I worked, like there was players that were way better than me, 100% by far. But I outworked. I was in training every single day. Every single day. I was so dedicated, so devoted to it. That's all I did. All I did. I left school. I missed on graduation. I missed on prom to do what I loved, right? So when it came to stopping, now it's just like everything's hitting me now. It's like, what am I gonna, what am I gonna do now? Did I just waste my whole entire life doing what, this for me to stop now? And all those, all those doubts, all those things kept coming in my head. Really was the worst. And all the anxiety was hitting. I was getting really bad anxiety from it. And it was just a sad topic to touch at the house. It was a very sad topic to touch. And be honest with you, the reason why I didn't go to college is because, or the college route for soccer was because, to me, my dream was to play pro. That was it, my dream. There's two doors. I can't stay in the between. I have to walk into one, and once you walk into one, yeah, you can, there's a way back, but I gave everything I had on that one. And for me to come back and go into the other door was, I was already burnt. So for the soccer route in college, I didn't take it because I was just so burnt out, and mentally, physically, I just don't think I could have done it. It was at a young age, usually you say this when you're 30, 40, and you're like, oh, my body can't take it anymore. But for me, I couldn't. Mentally, I couldn't. And Now it's a year and a half process of me just diving into what's going to happen in my life. What am I going to do? Anxiety kicks in. A lot of stress kicks in from just not knowing what to do. I want to be able to stay in shape, and I want to be able to go and play a little bit to get some cardio now, but I don't have the motivation to. So that's when you really know how it was for me. I just didn't want it.
Yeah.
And then that's when you start gaining weight from sitting around, no motivation towards anything. It was a really hard year and a half for me. Really hard. And that's when I think within that time, that's when we actually ended up meeting and we ended up speaking at the beach that one time. That's when I was at a really, really hard point, was not knowing what to do, frustrated.
That wraps up part 1 of our conversation with Jon Almeida. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us on this journey. I hope you found Jon's story as inspiring as I did, but we're not done yet. There's more to come in part 2, where we dive even deeper into his journey of resilience and transformation. So stay tuned and make sure you don't miss it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.